Carl Jung, the psychologist, said that bidden or unbidden, God is present. The problem is, I don't know that we believe that, and sometimes, depending on what we're going through in our life circumstances, it doesn't feel like that, or at least we don't think that. And I'm amazed as we come after Easter now to the post-resurrection appearances of Jesus and how ordinary they are. They don't appear extraordinary, but they happen in ordinary life with ordinary people, just like you and me. For example, Mary mistakes Jesus for the gardener by the empty tomb. Another story shows Jesus fixing breakfast, fish and chips by the seaside, making a fire, broiling some fish, having breakfast with the disciples. And in the story I'm thinking of for today, Luke chapter 24, it's about Emmaus. And, you know, if I was God, I'd try to do it in maybe some more extraordinary ways, wouldn't you? You know, at least some lightning, at least some earthquakes, a parade, at least some balloons. But God comes, this extraordinary God comes in ordinary ways. It takes us by surprise. So on the road to Emmaus, there's two disciples who are walking. And by the way, if I asked you where Emmaus was, what would you say? Or have you ever been there? The latest biblical archaeology shows that they don't know where Emmaus was. And they think maybe it's 9 possible sites where Emmaus was. And some historians don't even believe that it existed. And I kind of like the mystery of that, because to me it says that Emmaus is everywhere and Emmaus is always happening. So here are these two disciples walking, and they are walking in hopelessness, in despair, in disappointment, in depression, in doubt. They're walking to Emmaus. Many say that it maybe was a few hours away from Jerusalem. And then all of a sudden a stranger comes up and appears to them on the way and starts walking with them and asking them questions, engaging them in Scripture, explaining Scripture, connecting with them, walking with them, journeying with them. They get to the end of their journey and the stranger pretends like he's going to go on. They invite him to stay and have supper. And as they're having this ordinary meal of bread, their eyes were opened and they recognized that it's Jesus. What a beautiful story. And what a beautiful spiritual principle for our faith. You see, even their doubt, depression, despair, disbelief couldn't keep God away from them. Even their lack of knowledge of the Scripture couldn't keep God from showing up. Even their lack of belief in Jesus, or that couldn't prevent Jesus from showing up. So, and then in the breaking of the bread, many people say, well, it's the sacrament and it points to the importance of Scripture. Yes, that's true. That's all fine. But I think it's also just an ordinary meal. And many say these were two disciples who were at the feeding of the 5,000. And when Jesus does that in the meal, they recognize him. But it's about life being a church also. Life is a church. Life is sacramental. And why do we miss God in our presence? Because we're looking for him in special, extraordinary places like worship or at church or in the sacrament, when God is everywhere and all around. And life is Emmaus. Emmaus is always happening. Life is a church. Life is sacramental. And this extraordinary God comes to us in such ordinary ways, which makes it, God and life itself, quite extraordinary. So, I hope I'm still on here. We'll keep going. Love is always present. What's missing? What's simply missing is our attention to it. So, may we, and there's a clue in this passage and in this story about living from our hearts. And if we can tune in, how can we notice this extraordinary God in the midst of the ordinary? By tuning into our hearts. Notice that it says their hearts it's as if our hearts were burning when he talked to us on the road. And I think that's cluing in to us to invite God into our hearts, to open our hearts, to live by our hearts. And it's a subtle principle, maybe not so subtle, but all throughout Scripture where it says, love God with all your heart, trust in the Lord with all your heart. And then we get this story of our hearts burning within us. So in this week, in your life, pay attention to your heart burning. When those feelings well up, when you get little nudges or a sense of presence there or some feeling, tune in. It's reminding you that God is present. So, until next time, may you live all the days of your life.